The morning sun cast long shadows across the military training ground as Captain Sarah Mitchell watched another recruit miss the target completely. The bullet sailed wide, hitting nothing but dirt and disappointment. She shook her head, knowing that in real combat, such mistakes cost lives. Sarah had been observing the sniper training program for 3 months now, and what she saw troubled her deeply. The recruits were struggling with basic marksmanship, and even the experienced soldiers were having difficulty with long-range precision shots. The program was failing, and everyone knew it. "Another miss," muttered Sergeant Rodriguez, standing beside her with binoculars. "That's the 5th one in a row for Private Johnson." Sarah nodded grimly. The military had invested millions of dollars in this elite sniper program, hoping to create the best marksman in the world. Instead, they were watching their carefully selected recruits fail target after target. The pressure was mounting from higher command, and rumors were spreading that the program might be shut down entirely. The training facility itself was impressive. Located in the Nevada desert, it featured state-of-the-art equipment, computer-controlled targets, and ranges that stretched for miles. The rifles were the finest available, equipped with the latest scopes and stabilization systems. Everything was perfect except for one crucial element: the people pulling the triggers. Private Johnson, a young man from Texas who had grown up hunting with his father, was supposed to be one of their best prospects. His background suggested natural talent, and his initial tests had been promising. But now, under the pressure of formal training, he was falling apart. His hands shook as he lined up each shot, and his breathing became erratic when the countdown began. "Take your time," Johnson called out Instructor Williams from the observation tower. "Remember your breathing exercises." But Johnson was beyond help at this point. The weight of expectation, the knowledge that his career depended on this moment, had overwhelmed his natural abilities. He fired again, and once more the bullet went wide of the target. The electronic scoreboard remained stubbornly at 0. Sarah had seen this pattern repeated dozens of times over the past weeks. Promising recruits would arrive with excellent credentials, only to crumble under the intense pressure of the program. The instructors were skilled and experienced, but they seemed unable to bridge the gap between theoretical knowledge and practical application. The problem wasn't just with the new recruits either. Even seasoned soldiers who had performed well in combat were struggling with the precision requirements of sniper training. The difference between being a good soldier and being an elite marksman was proving to be much larger than anyone had anticipated. Colonel Harris, the program director, had been pacing the grounds all morning, his frustration evident in every step. He had staked his reputation on this program, promising his superiors that within 6 months he would deliver a team of world-class snipers. Now, with the deadline approaching, he was facing the possibility of complete failure. The training schedule was relentless. Recruits started before dawn and continued until well after sunset, practicing everything from breath control to wind calculation. They studied ballistics, learned to read environmental conditions, and memorized the technical specifications of their weapons. On paper, they knew everything they needed to know. In practice, they couldn't hit a target at 800 meters to save their lives. Sarah herself had never been through sniper training, but she had extensive combat experience and understood the psychological factors at play. She recognized the signs of performance anxiety, the way pressure could transform capable soldiers into nervous wrecks. What puzzled her was why the instructors hadn't found a way to address these mental barriers. The current instructor, Master Sergeant Williams, was a legend in military circles. He had over 20 confirmed kills in 3 different conflicts and had trained hundreds of soldiers over his career. His technical knowledge was unquestionable, and his dedication to his students was absolute. Yet even he seemed baffled by the current situation. "I've never seen anything like this," Williams confided to Sarah during a break between training sessions. "These kids have all the tools they need. The equipment is better than anything I ever had in the field. But somehow, they just can't put it all together." The failure rate was approaching 90%. Out of 30 carefully selected candidates who had started the program, only 3 were showing any promise at all. The rest were struggling with basic accuracy, let alone the advanced techniques required for long-range precision shooting. The psychological evaluation reports made for depressing reading. The recruits were experiencing high levels of stress, self-doubt, and performance anxiety. Many were requesting transfers to other units, preferring to abandon their sniper aspirations rather than continue failing publicly day after day. Sarah found herself thinking about the problem constantly, even when she was off duty. There had to be a solution, some way to unlock the potential that these soldiers clearly possessed. The military needed skilled marksmen now more than ever, as conflicts around the world increasingly required precision strikes rather than overwhelming firepower. The political implications were also significant. The sniper program had been publicly announced as part of a new initiative to create more effective, efficient military units. If it failed completely, it would be a major embarrassment for the entire organization. Careers would be ruined, funding would be cut, and public confidence in military competence would suffer. As the sun began to set on another disappointing day of training, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She couldn't continue to stand by and watch the program collapse. She had an idea, a different approach that might work where traditional methods had failed. But implementing it would require her to step far outside her normal role and take risks that could end her own military career. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the training ground early, before any of the instructors or recruits. She wanted to study the setup more carefully to understand exactly what was happening when the soldiers took their shots. The range was quiet in the pre-dawn darkness, the targets standing like silent sentinels in the distance. She picked up one of the training rifles and examined it carefully. The weapon was indeed impressive, precision manufactured, perfectly balanced, with a scope that could resolve details at incredible distances. Everything about it spoke of technical excellence and careful engineering. But, as Sarah held the rifle, she began to understand something that the instructors had missed. The weapon was too perfect, too refined for soldiers who were already nervous and overthinking every shot. Sometimes, she realized, the most sophisticated equipment could actually get in the way of natural ability rather than enhancing it. Sarah's theory was about to be tested in the most dramatic way possible. She had spent the previous evening researching the backgrounds of every failed recruit, looking for patterns that the instructors might have missed. What she discovered surprised her. Many of these soldiers had actually been excellent marksmen before entering the program. Private Martinez had been a competitive shooter in college, winning several state championships. Corporal Thompson had grown up on a ranch, hunting for the family table since he was 12 years old. Sergeant Davis had been the top performer in basic training marksmanship. Yet all of them were now struggling to hit stationary targets under controlled conditions. The problem, Sarah realized, wasn't lack of skill, it was paralysis by analysis. The intensive technical training was causing the recruits to overthink every shot, breaking down the natural processes that had made them good marksmen in the first place. They were becoming trapped in their own heads, second-guessing instincts that had served them well for years. She decided to observe the morning training session from a different perspective. Instead of watching from the official observation post, she positioned herself among the recruits, close enough to hear their conversations and see their body language as they prepared for each shot. Remember to account for the crosswind, Private Martinez muttered to himself as he lined up his shot. Adjust for elevation. Check the rangefinder again. Breathe in, breathe out. Hold, squeeze. The bullet missed the target by 3 feet. Sarah could see what was happening. Martinez was trying to consciously control processes that should be automatic. His natural shooting ability was being smothered by excessive instruction and rigid procedures. The more he thought about the technical aspects, the worse his performance became. Master Sergeant Williams noticed Sarah among the recruits and walked over to her position. "Any insights, Captain?" he asked quietly. "I'm running out of ideas here." "I think we might be overcomplicating things," Sarah replied, watching as another recruit prepared for his shot. "These soldiers already know how to shoot. Maybe we need to get out of their way and let them remember what they already know." Williams looked skeptical. "The technical training is essential for long-range work. Without proper understanding of ballistics and environmental factors, they'll never achieve the precision we need." "I'm not suggesting we abandon the technical training," Sarah said. "But maybe we're applying it at the wrong time. What if we let them shoot first, build confidence, and then layer in the advanced concepts gradually?" Before Williams could respond, the morning's training was interrupted by an unexpected visitor. General Morrison, the base commander, arrived with a team of Pentagon officials who had come to evaluate the program personally. Word had reached Washington about the performance problems, and now the highest levels of military leadership were paying attention. "Gentlemen," General Morrison announced to the assembled recruits, "you have 1 hour to demonstrate the capabilities of this program. The future of sniper training may depend on what happens here today." The pressure in the air became almost tangible. Sarah could see the recruits tensing up even further, knowing that their careers and the entire program hung in the balance. This was exactly the wrong environment for the kind of breakthrough they needed. Private Johnson was selected to fire the demonstration shots. He had been struggling all week, but he was still officially the top-ranked recruit in the class. As he approached the firing position, Sarah could see his hands starting to shake. The weight of expectation was crushing his ability to perform. 800-meter target, Williams announced. Wind speed 4 knots from the southwest. Temperature 72 degrees. Johnson began his pre-shot routine, checking and rechecking every measurement. The officials watched through binoculars as he made minute adjustments to his scope and calculated trajectory compensations. Everything looked professional and precise from a distance. But Sarah was close enough to see what the officials couldn't. Johnson was falling apart. His breathing was irregular. His grip on the rifle was too tight, and his eyes were darting between the scope and the wind flags with increasing desperation. He was overthinking every element of the shot instead of trusting his training and instincts. The first shot went wide by 6 feet. The second was better but still missed the target completely. By the third attempt, Johnson was visibly struggling to maintain his composure. The officials began whispering among themselves, and Sarah could see General Morrison's expression growing darker with each miss. Perhaps we could try a different recruit, Williams suggested diplomatically, but the damage was already done. The demonstration was supposed to showcase the program's success, not highlight its failures. At that moment, something unexpected happened. A strong gust of wind blew across the range, causing one of the target frames to shift position. In the confusion that followed, as range safety officers moved to secure the equipment, Sarah found herself standing next to the rifle that Johnson had just abandoned. The opportunity was there, but taking it would be incredibly risky. She wasn't part of the sniper program, hadn't gone through the official training, and had no authorization to fire during the demonstration. If she missed, it would be a career-ending embarrassment. If she succeeded, it might save the program, but could also undermine the authority of the instructors. General Morrison was checking his watch impatiently. "How long does it take to fix a target stand?" he asked rhetorically. The Pentagon officials were looking equally frustrated, and Sarah could sense that they were already mentally composing their negative report. The decision made itself. Sarah stepped forward and picked up the rifle. "Sir," she called out to General Morrison, "request permission to attempt the shot while the range safety issue is being resolved." The request was so unexpected that it caught everyone off guard. Williams started to object, pointing out that Sarah wasn't qualified for the demonstration, but General Morrison held up a hand to silence him. "You're not part of the sniper program, Captain," the general said. "What makes you think you can succeed where our specially trained marksmen are failing?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "With respect, sir, maybe that's exactly why I might succeed. Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one." The range fell silent. Even the range safety officers stopped what they were doing to watch this unexpected development. Sarah was acutely aware that dozens of eyes were focused on her, that careers and reputations hung in the balance, and that she was about to either save or destroy her own military future. But instead of feeling the pressure that had crippled the recruits, Sarah found herself surprisingly calm. She wasn't supposed to be here, wasn't expected to perform, and had nothing to prove to anyone except herself. That freedom from expectation might be exactly what the situation needed. She lifted the rifle and felt its weight, its balance. The weapon was indeed beautifully made, but she ignored all the technical specifications and advanced features. Instead, she simply focused on the fundamental relationship between herself, the rifle, and the target in the distance. The target that had been giving everyone so much trouble was 800 meters away, a challenging shot, but well within the capabilities of both the weapon and any competent marksman. Sarah had fired similar shots many times in her career, though never under such scrutiny. She chambered around and took her position, aware that this single shot might determine the fate of the entire sniper training program. Sarah settled into her firing position with a natural ease that surprised everyone watching. While the recruits had been taught elaborate pre-shot routines involving multiple measurements and calculations, Sarah simply looked through the scope, made a quick assessment of conditions, and prepared to fire. She could hear Master Sergeant Williams behind her, quietly reading off the technical data. Wind speed 4 knots southwest, temperature 72 degrees, humidity 45%, range 800 meters exactly. But Sarah wasn't paying attention to the numbers. Instead, she was relying on something far more basic: her eyes, her instincts, and years of practical experience. The crosshairs settled on the target naturally, without the forced precision that had been causing the recruits so much trouble. Sarah's breathing was steady and relaxed, her grip on the rifle firm but not tense. Most importantly, her mind was clear of the technical clutter that had been paralyzing the other shooters. General Morrison and the Pentagon officials watched intently through their binoculars. The recruits stood frozen, hardly daring to breathe. Even the range safety officers had stopped their work to observe this unexpected demonstration. Sarah squeezed the trigger in one smooth motion. The rifle fired with a sharp crack that echoed across the desert range. Through the scope, she watched the bullet's impact, a perfect center hit on the target 800 meters away. The silence that followed was profound. After weeks of watching trained marksmen miss target after target, everyone had just witnessed a single shot placed exactly where it needed to be. The electronic scoring system confirmed what their eyes had already seen, a perfect bullseye on the first attempt. "Outstanding shot, Captain," General Morrison said, lowering his binoculars with obvious relief. "Perhaps you could explain to these gentlemen how you accomplished what our specially trained snipers have been unable to do." Sarah set the rifle down carefully before answering. "Sir, I think the problem isn't with the training or the equipment. It's with the approach. These soldiers are being taught to think their way through shots that should be instinctive." She gestured toward the recruits, who were listening with intense interest. Private Martinez was a competitive shooter before he joined the program. Corporal Thompson grew up hunting. They already know how to hit targets. But we've convinced them that their natural abilities aren't good enough, that they need to consciously control every aspect of the shot. Williams stepped forward, clearly struggling with what he had just witnessed. "Captain, with all due respect, precision shooting requires technical knowledge. You can't just point and shoot at 800 meters and expect consistent results." "I agree completely," Sarah replied. "Technical knowledge is essential for advanced marksmanship. But maybe we're teaching it at the wrong time. What if we let these soldiers remember what they already know how to do, build their confidence back up, and then layer in the advanced concepts gradually?" One of the Pentagon officials, a colonel named Bradley, spoke up for the first time. "Are you suggesting that our entire training methodology is incorrect?" "I'm suggesting that we might be overcomplicating things," Sarah said diplomatically. "These recruits arrive here as competent marksmen. By the time they leave, many of them can't hit a stationary target. That suggests our training might be breaking down skills rather than building them up." To demonstrate her point, Sarah turned to Private Martinez. "When you were competing in college, what was your pre-shot routine?" Martinez looked confused by the question. "I didn't really have one, ma'am. I just lined up the shot and fired when it felt right." "And how did that work for you?" "I won the state championship twice," Martinez admitted quietly. Sarah nodded. "And now what's your pre-shot routine here?" Martinez began reciting the elaborate sequence he had been taught. Check wind speed and direction, calculate range compensation, adjust for temperature and humidity, establish proper breathing pattern, verify scope settings, account for rifle cant. He trailed off, realizing how complex it had become. "Exactly," Sarah said. "We've turned shooting into a mathematical equation instead of a physical skill. The human brain can only consciously manage a few variables at once. When we force these soldiers to think about 15 different factors before every shot, we paralyze their natural abilities." General Morrison was nodding thoughtfully. "What would you recommend, Captain?" "Give me permission to work with these recruits for 1 week," Sarah said. "Let me see if I can help them remember what they already know. If it doesn't work, we'll go back to the current system." The request was highly irregular. Sarah wasn't a qualified instructor, had never been through the sniper program herself, and was essentially asking to experiment with soldiers whose careers were already hanging by a thread. But, given the complete failure of the current approach, unconventional solutions were starting to look attractive. 1 week, General Morrison agreed after a brief consultation with the Pentagon officials. "But I want to see dramatic improvement, or this entire program gets shut down." The next morning, Sarah began working with the recruits in a completely different way. Instead of starting with technical lectures and elaborate procedures, she had them simply shoot at targets. No calculations, no pre-shot routines, no pressure, just basic marksmanship at moderate ranges. "Forget everything you've been taught about wind compensation and ballistic coefficients," she told them. "For now, we're going back to fundamentals. You're going to shoot like you did before you came here." Private Johnson, who had been struggling so badly during the demonstration, looked skeptical. "But, ma'am, how do we account for environmental factors?" "Your eyes and brain are already doing that," Sarah explained. "You've been shooting long enough to unconsciously compensate for wind and distance. The problem is we've convinced you to override those natural calculations with conscious ones. She had Johnson fire 10 shots at a 400-meter target without any technical preparation. To his amazement, 8 of them hit the bullseye. His natural shooting ability was still there, buried under layers of overthinking and performance anxiety. "I don't understand," Johnson said, staring at his target through binoculars. "How is this possible? I haven't done any calculations." "Because you don't need to do calculations for every shot," Sarah explained. "Your brain is an incredibly sophisticated computer that can process visual information and make targeting adjustments faster than any conscious calculation. We just need to trust it to do its job." Word of the unconventional training methods spread quickly through the base. Other instructors came to observe, some supportive and others openly skeptical. Master Sergeant Williams was particularly conflicted, torn between his loyalty to established procedures and the undeniable evidence of improved performance. By the third day, all of the recruits were shooting better than they had in months. Their confidence was returning, and with it came the natural accuracy that had made them candidates for the program in the first place. They were hitting targets consistently at ranges that had previously seemed impossible. But Sarah knew that building confidence was only the first step. The recruits still needed to learn the advanced techniques required for truly long-range precision shooting. The challenge would be introducing technical concepts without destroying the natural abilities they had just rediscovered. On the fourth day, she began the delicate process of adding back the scientific elements of marksmanship. But instead of presenting them as rigid rules to be followed before every shot, she taught them as tools to be used when natural instincts weren't sufficient. "Wind compensation isn't something you calculate," she explained during a classroom session. "It's something you see and feel. The calculations just help you understand what you're already observing." The transformation was remarkable. Soldiers who had been failing completely were now hitting targets at 600 and 700 meters with increasing regularity. Their shooting had become fluid and natural again, informed by technical knowledge but not dominated by it. By the end of the week, the transformation was so dramatic that it seemed impossible to believe. The same recruits who had been missing targets completely were now consistently hitting bullseyes at ranges that had previously been beyond their capabilities. But the real test was still to come. General Morrison had scheduled a final demonstration for the Pentagon officials, and this time the standards would be even higher. The recruits would need to engage targets at 1,000 meters, true long-range precision shooting that separated elite marksmen from ordinary soldiers. Sarah felt the pressure mounting as the demonstration day approached. She had succeeded in rebuilding the recruits' confidence and natural shooting abilities, but 1,000-meter shots required perfect integration of technical knowledge with instinctive skill. A single mistake could destroy everything they had accomplished. "I'm scared I'll forget everything when the pressure starts," Private Martinez confided to Sarah the evening before the demonstration. "What if I go back to overthinking like before?" "Trust your training," Sarah replied. "Not the procedures you memorized, but the skills you've been developing your whole life. The rifle is just a tool. Your eyes, your hands, your instincts, those are what make the shot." The morning of the demonstration arrived with perfect weather conditions. No wind, clear visibility, and moderate temperature, ideal for precision shooting. But Sarah knew that external conditions were less important than the mental state of her shooters. The Pentagon officials arrived with even more observers this time, including representatives from allied military forces who were considering adopting similar training programs. The pressure was enormous, but Sarah had prepared her recruits for this moment. "Remember," she told them as they prepared their equipment, "you've already proven you can make these shots. The only difference today is that more people are watching. But the targets haven't moved, the rifles haven't changed, and your abilities are still the same." Private Johnson was selected to fire the first demonstration shot. He had made the most dramatic improvement during the week of training, going from complete failure to consistent accuracy. As he approached the firing position, Sarah could see that he was nervous but not panicked. 1,000-meter target, Master Sergeant Williams announced. "No time limit. Take the shot when ready." Johnson settled into position with the smooth confidence that had replaced his earlier anxiety. He looked through the scope, assessed the conditions with a quick glance at the wind flags, and aligned the crosshairs on the distant target. There was no lengthy pre-shot routine, no visible calculations, just the natural preparation of a competent marksman. The shot rang out across the range. Through binoculars, the observers watched the bullet impact just millimeters from the center of the target. It wasn't a perfect bullseye, but It was an excellent hit at an extremely challenging range. Outstanding, General Morrison commented. But the real test was consistency. One good shot could be luck. Multiple hits would prove the training method worked. Private Martinez was next. He had been Sarah's biggest success story, completely overcoming the performance anxiety that had been crippling his natural abilities. As he lined up his shot, Sarah could see the confidence and focus that had made him a champion in civilian competition. His shot was even better than Johnson's, a perfect center hit that drew murmurs of appreciation from the observers. Martinez smiled as he cleared the rifle, his confidence now fully restored. Corporal Thompson followed with another excellent hit. Then, Sergeant Davis with a shot that was just inches from perfect. One after another, the recruits who had been complete failures a week earlier were now demonstrating precision shooting at the highest level. But the real surprise came when Colonel Bradley, one of the Pentagon officials, asked Sarah to demonstrate her own shooting under the new training methodology. "Captain," he said, "you've shown us that conventional training methods might be flawed. But can you consistently apply your own approach at extended ranges? We'd like to see you engage multiple targets at various distances." Sarah had expected this request and had prepared accordingly. But what the observers didn't know was that she had decided to push the demonstration even further. Instead of the standard 1,000-meter shots, she was going to attempt something that would truly showcase the potential of natural marksmanship enhanced by technical knowledge. "Sir," she said, "with your permission, I'd like to demonstrate on the 1,200-meter targets. And not just one shot. I'd like to engage 5 consecutive targets without pause for recalculation." The request caused a stir among the observers. Even experienced snipers rarely attempted rapid engagement at such extended ranges. The technical challenges were enormous. Tiny variations in wind speed or direction could cause misses by several feet at that distance. General Morrison looked concerned. "Captain, that's an extremely ambitious demonstration. Are you certain you want to attempt something so difficult with so much at stake?" Sarah nodded calmly. "Sir, the whole point of our new training approach is that technical knowledge should enhance natural ability, not replace it. This demonstration will prove whether that principle works at the highest levels of precision shooting." She took her position with the same relaxed confidence she had shown throughout the week. The 1,200-meter targets were barely visible to the naked eye, appearing as tiny dots in the distance. Through the scope, they resolved into clear circles, but even the slightest error in aim or timing would result in complete misses. Sarah's approach was revolutionary in its simplicity. Instead of calculating precise compensations for each shot, she relied on her eyes to show her how the wind was affecting bullet flight. She used the first shot as a reference point for the others, making micro-adjustments based on visual feedback rather than mathematical formulas. The first shot hit slightly left of center, still an excellent hit at that range, but not perfect. The observers expected her to pause and recalculate, but instead Sarah immediately engaged the second target. This shot was closer to center, showing that she had unconsciously compensated for the wind drift from the first shot. The third shot was even better, the fourth nearly perfect, and the fifth landed dead center in the bullseye. In less than 3 minutes, Sarah had demonstrated a level of consistent precision that few marksmen could achieve even with unlimited time for preparation. The silence that followed was even more profound than after her first demonstration shot. What the observers had just witnessed challenged decades of accepted wisdom about precision shooting. Sarah had proven that natural ability, properly developed and enhanced with technical knowledge, could exceed the results of purely analytical approaches. "Remarkable," Colonel Bradley said finally. "Captain, you've demonstrated something that most experts would consider impossible. How do you explain such consistent accuracy without detailed calculations for each shot?" Sarah set down the rifle before answering. "Sir, the human visual system can process information far more quickly and accurately than conscious calculation. When we train shooters to override their natural abilities with mathematical formulas, we're actually degrading their performance." She gestured toward the targets in the distance. Every experienced hunter knows this instinctively. They don't calculate wind drift for every shot. They see it, feel it, and compensate automatically. Our job as instructors should be to enhance those natural abilities, not replace them with artificial systems. Master Sergeant Williams, who had been watching with increasing amazement, finally spoke up. "Captain, I've been training marksmen for 20 years. What you've accomplished this week challenges everything I thought I knew about precision shooting." "It doesn't challenge your knowledge," Sarah replied diplomatically. "It just suggests a different way to apply it. Technical training is still essential, but maybe it should support natural ability rather than override it. The demonstration had exceeded everyone's expectations, but Sarah knew that the real test would come when these recruits faced actual combat situations. Perfect shooting under controlled conditions was impressive, but battlefield effectiveness required skills that could only be proven in real-world scenarios. The success of Sarah's training methods spread through military circles faster than anyone anticipated. Within days of the demonstration, requests were pouring in from military units around the world wanting to implement similar approaches. But Sarah knew that lasting change would require more than impressive demonstrations. It would need proven battlefield effectiveness. 6 months later, that proof arrived in the most dramatic way possible. The first graduates of the Reformed Training Program were deployed to a critical mission in a hostile region where precision marksmanship could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Private Johnson, who had once struggled to hit targets at basic training ranges, found himself in a position that required the most demanding shot of his military career. Enemy forces had taken hostages in a compound 850 meters from his position, and only a perfect shot could neutralize the threat without endangering innocent lives. As Johnson settled into position, he remembered Sarah's teachings about trusting natural instincts enhanced by technical knowledge. The wind was gusting unpredictably, the light was fading, and the pressure was enormous. But instead of becoming paralyzed by calculations, Johnson allowed his trained instincts to guide the shot. The bullet found its mark perfectly, ending the crisis and saving multiple lives. When the after-action reports reached Pentagon officials, they contained glowing praise for the Reformed Training Program that had produced such capable marksmen. But perhaps even more impressive than individual success stories was the overall transformation of the sniper program. The failure rate dropped from 90% to less than 10%. Soldiers who had been washing out of training were now graduating as skilled marksmen. The program that had been facing cancellation became a model for military training programs worldwide. Sarah herself received recognition for her revolutionary contribution to military training, but she remained focused on continuous improvement. She established a research program to study the psychological and physiological aspects of precision shooting, working to understand exactly why natural instincts could be so much more effective than purely analytical approaches. The research revealed fascinating insights about how the human brain processes visual information and makes targeting decisions. The recruits who had been failures under the old system became some of the most effective marksmen in military history. Private Martinez went on to set records for long-range precision shooting. Corporal Thompson developed new techniques for rapid target engagement that were adopted throughout the military. Sergeant Davis became an instructor himself, teaching Sarah's methods to a new generation of marksmen. But perhaps the most significant change was in the mindset of military training itself. The old assumption that advanced skills required complex procedures and rigid protocols gave way to a more nuanced understanding of human capability. Trainers learned to identify and enhance natural talents rather than trying to replace them with standardized systems. Master Sergeant Williams, initially skeptical of Sarah's methods, became one of their most effective advocates. He worked with Sarah to develop training curricula that balanced technical knowledge with natural ability development. His experience bridging traditional military training culture with innovative approaches proved invaluable in implementing widespread changes. The success of the Reformed program also had international implications. Allied military forces sent observers to study the new training methods, and many adapted similar approaches for their own marksman programs. The improvements in accuracy and performance were so dramatic that precision shooting standards were raised across multiple military organizations. Sarah's personal legacy extended beyond her specific contributions to marksmanship training. Her willingness to challenge established procedures and risk her career for principle inspired other military professionals to think creatively about their own fields. Innovation and continuous improvement became more valued in military culture, leading to advances in everything from logistics to communications. The rifle range where Sarah had first demonstrated her approach became something of a pilgrimage site for military instructors studying advanced training techniques. The targets at 1,200 meters still bore the marks of her perfect shots, serving as a reminder that exceptional performance comes from understanding and enhancing human capabilities rather than trying to replace them with artificial systems. As Sarah looked back on the transformation she had helped create, she reflected on how simple the solution had ultimately been. The recruits hadn't lacked ability or dedication. They had simply been taught to distrust their own capabilities. By helping them rediscover confidence in their natural skills while providing technical knowledge as support rather than replacement, the program had unlocked potential that was always there. The lesson extended far beyond military training. In any field where human performance was critical, the balance between technical knowledge and natural ability required careful consideration. Overemphasizing either approach could lead to suboptimal results, but properly integrating both could achieve levels of performance that seemed almost superhuman. Today, the principles Sarah developed continue to influence training programs around the world. The idea that technology and technical knowledge should enhance rather than replace human capabilities has become fundamental to modern performance training. Whether training athletes, pilots, surgeons, or marksmen, the focus has shifted toward developing and supporting natural abilities rather than overriding them with artificial systems. The sniper training program that had once faced cancellation became a model of excellence, producing marksmen whose capabilities exceeded anything thought possible under the old training methods. But, more importantly, it demonstrated that innovation and human insight could transform even the most established and traditional systems when someone was willing to challenge conventional wisdom and trust in human potential. Sarah's story became legendary in military circles, not just for her shooting abilities, but for her courage in challenging the status quo when lives and careers were at stake. Her willingness to risk everything for her beliefs about human potential created lasting change that benefited countless soldiers and saved numerous lives in the years that followed. The empty rifle range where it all began still echoes with the memory of those perfect shots, not just the bullets that found their targets, but the ideas that transformed an entire approach to human training and development. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is simply the courage to trust in human capability and the wisdom to enhance it properly.